Hi, welcome to the Cows Podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Burney. A catalyst is defined as a person or thing that precipitates an event. A catalyst is something that it participates in a reaction, but does not get consumed in the reaction. There's a heart behind this podcast for, people with aspirations. There's a heart behind this podcast for motivated people that want to make a difference, that have a bias for action, that really, truly want to be a catalyst in the environment around them, both professionally and personally, in their homes, in their workplace, and beyond. So welcome to this podcast. I really hope you're enjoying the series that we're in. Welcome to this episode, and let's dive right in. This is leadership. I'm really excited to have Amanda Fisher on today. And before I turn things over to her for her introduction, I just wanted to share, has the nickname the Cash Flow Queen, which you may be surprised, how we're going to get into the theme of This is Leadership. But she and I met recently and had a fantastic introductory conversation. A lot of things that I took note of that I can't wait to jump into. But I did want to just share a bit about Amanda's background. She's a financial educator and author and does quite a few speaking engagements. And she really has a passion for helping with financial education and literacy, specifically around business owners. And so I'm excited to kind of look at this series from her angle and hear her journey. But Amanda, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Hunter.
So as we get in, I just wanted to kind of start with an overview of your journey. I know you shared a lot of cool things specifically, and I don't want to steal your thunder here, but I recall you saying you accidentally became an accountant. So we don't necessarily have to, go year by year or, each step of the way, but can you just kind of kick us off with an overview of your career?
Yeah, I did accidentally become an accountant because when I left high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do, except I was really good at the sciences. So, I started a science degree, majoring in chemistry, of all things. But then I met someone working in the summer, and he said, no, do accounting. And I had no idea what it was. And I went, yep, this sounds good. I'll do that. And luckily, it's something I really enjoy. And so I fell on my feet, very fortunately, on all of that. And so over my working life, I became a CPA and done lots of work in that space, working with hundreds of different business owners over the years. And one of the things I identified was most people don't really know what their numbers are. And so as my career has sort of morphed and changed over the years, I'm focusing more and more into, that financial education space, because knowing your numbers, understanding what they are is so important to get where you want to go in business. You can kind of bumble along and get a certain level of success. But if you really want to succeed, knowing your numbers is just absolutely vital. And along the way, someone told me, you're the cash flow queen. I went, no. And I resisted it for a number of years, and people kept calling me that. I went, okay, righto, time to embrace it, because cash flow queen to me felt like it kind of niched me into only talking cash flow. And for me, it's a much bigger picture than that. So, but it's stuck. So I'm the cash flow queen.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I do, just reading your bio and going through our introductory talk, I do recall, you kind of alluding to spending a better part of your career. I can't remember how you worded it. Just basically, I think maybe fitting the mold was how you had described it. Can you describe some of the dynamics of that season of your career and just what kind of things did you wrestle with in terms of what you wanted to experience in your career? And of course, now we have the pleasure of looking at that from where you are now as a speaker and author. And I think I want to build up to a lot of those great things that we can talk about. But I'm just curious. I love to hear the journey, the obstacles, the struggles, and things along those lines.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to confess to exactly how old I am, but when I started out in the accounting industry, it was exceedingly male dominated, to the extent that at university there were 3 women in a class of, I don't know, 200, 250, 300. I'm not sure now what the numbers were, but we were the minor minority. There was just a couple of us, and at work, my very first job, I was the only woman in the business that wasn't, one of the secretaries or the receptionist. They were secretaries back in those days, but those admin PA type people. So I never fitted in. Like, I was this odd one out all the way along. And, as I say, a very male dominated world. And at the time, the older generation quite, chauvinistic about, you should be home being a wife and a mother and all those things, and not really acknowledging that women had a place in the industry and had something to give. So I was forever kind of hitting that, I hate calling it the glass ceiling, but forever hitting those kind of barriers where, one firm I worked for, in the partnership agreement, they had written no female partners, so you kind of knew that you could work up to a certain level, but beyond that, if you wanted to go further, if you had big dreams and goals and aspirations to kind of get to the top of the tree, which I did, then this wasn't going to be the place for me. So you kind of worked your way around and kind of went, well, okay, so this isn't the right place for me. So you work there for a few years, work out that it's not right, and then move to somewhere else, forever looking for, the more progressive firms. And ultimately that led me to go into business on my own, because I never quite fitted in. I kind of, there were the partners, there were the firms that wouldn't let me be a partner. I became a partner in another one. And then after a few years, they said, actually, we don't want you as a partner anymore. It was a bit more than that, but it was quite soul destroying, I have to say, at the time. And, it kind of was like, and they did these personality tests on us all. And it was one of those ones that was ABCD. I can't remember what they were and which test it was, but everybody else in the firm were A's, and I think was a C or a D, I can't remember. And it was just another kind of nail in my coffin. She doesn't fit. She's not one of us. And the person that ran that said, the reality is you should have A's, B's, C's, and D's, because then you get this fully rounded, business. You've got people coming from different angles, so different input, and at a leadership level, you need to have the different types of people, because they bring different strengths to the equation. Mm-hmm. But the guys were just, no, she doesn't fit. We need her out. And, in a sense, they did me a favor, because it sent me kind of off onto my entrepreneurial journey that potentially I might not have had if I had been able to just work up the ranks in a traditional CPA practice, where I could have made partner and kind of stayed there doing that for the rest of my working life. Mm-hmm. I think maybe I might have got bored, but I think part of it was I was a woman in a man's world. But I think the other thing I realized was I had all these ideas. I had these, we could do this differently. We could be more efficient here. We could do these other things, and just being slapped down every time I suggested something, because it wasn't the way we do it, or, well, what would she know? One or other of those. And it just allowed me to do what I now do. And obviously, I'm my own boss, which is nothing better than that, if you enjoy doing that, which I love, because I don't have to, I'm not constrained by what someone else is saying. I'm not having to do what someone else insists I do, whether I want to or not. And I guess I've kind of blazed a bit of a trail for some of the women that have come up behind me. And I know some that have worked with me over the years have come back to me in later, more recent times. As, thank you so much for A, mentoring us, and B, leading that way for us, because it's a different world now than what it was when I started. And it just makes a big difference to what we all can do, and being able to just say, allow that to be a wider opportunity for more people as a leader is fantastic. That's kind of one of the things I really love, is knowing that I'm making a difference and not really knowing how many people I'm impacting, but making a difference nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. No, I love that story, and I love that your call out about blazing that trail, because it absolutely is a trailblazing story. And you just briefly alluded to mentoring, which I definitely want to get into. But I just wonder, as you share this story, and maybe I missed it, was there a single compelling event that was the trigger to taking the entrepreneurial leap, or was it something that you kind of phased into? What was that journey like for you?
It was the trigger event. So the partnership that I was in, 2 weeks before the end of a financial year, partner meeting. Don't know whether it was a planned one or a specially called one, don't remember. And it was 3 partners, two men and I, and they called me in and said, we don't want you as a partner anymore.
Okay.
You haven't brought new fit, you haven't done X, Y, Z, none of which had been discussed previously, none of which had been given any warnings to me. You need to up your ante on whatever. And I thought I had, kind of a job for life. In a sense, I thought that was going to be my place, working in that firm as a partner for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, 20 something plus years ago. And I mean, aside from being absolutely shocked and stunned and, all those things,
Mm-hmm.
they reduced my pay to 40% of what it was, kept me on as an employee, although I was purportedly a partner on the outside. Obviously I knew my days were numbered, and I'm, at that point it's like, okay, now what do I do? Do I go and work? Sorry, I know you're a bloke and probably have lots of men that are listening, but do I go and work for another lot of men who are going to treat me the same again? Or do I do something else? And if I'm going to do something else, what is the something else? Do I go and work for a company as a company accountant, as a financial controller, as a CFO, that kind of role? But then they're probably got men as my bosses. And so again, I'm in that same thing. So that whole thinking process, I guess, was going on in my mind at the time with well, I'm just going to have to do it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And go out and start my own business. And that way, no one can tell me I'm not good enough. No one can tell me what to do, how to do, and constrain me in any way, because I'm doing it myself. So yeah, it was very much a trigger event that I didn't see coming at the time. And I spent 12 months kind of planning what I call plotting my exit, to get myself started out, working out what I needed to do. So it was a very planned start point. I'd done the research, found premises, worked out my costs, did all that sort of thing. And, but yeah, it was very much a real catalyst event there to say, no, enough's enough. If I'm going to succeed in this world, I'm going to have to do it on my own terms, on my own way. So yeah, I'm not told that story in that detail before. I usually just slide over it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing
yeah, thanks,
that.
Hunter.
I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that. And I think a couple things come to mind. One is your comment about going through the training and all these A's and you're a C, and the facilitator, it sound like, called that out. I was like, hey, that you actually don't want a team that's all A's. And I think it's unfortunate that you were in that situation where it sounds like whoever was kind of leading things, or who you were working alongside was kind of blind to that. Fortunately, there seems to be an increased focus in that aspect of building teams these days. So hopefully that gap still doesn't exist. But I imagine I can only try to put myself in your shoes, right? But it sounds like that you gave it a couple different shots. You gave it a couple different opportunities, and then said, you know what, like I like the way you put it. I'm gonna decide whether I'm good enough or not. I'm gonna decide whether my performance is. So I
Yes.
love that. I personally have unexpectedly lost a job, and yeah, it's I didn't have 12 months to plan an exit, but it's regardless of the timeline for an individual's.
Yeah. What was interesting, I found out later, one of the partners actually said after I'd left, and one of the staff that I kind of was a bit friendly with said, Amanda was better at looking after her clients and is a better an accountant than I am. So I kind of I heard through the grapevine that whilst they didn't, there was XYZ that wasn't up to scratch from their mind, but he acknowledged, at least one of them acknowledged, that I was very good at what I did. But those things, you lose your job, you get this sort of situation. It's a massive knock to your confidence, and it takes a lot to kind of regroup and build that up again. But yeah, it's a long time ago now. So
no, and I appreciate you sharing that again, and kind of tying it back to the theme of this is leadership. Leadership is being able to look at things dynamically, blazing a trail, not just accepting norms for the sake of carrying on a tradition blindly. And more importantly, leadership is the ability to understand that people have different strengths, that people respond to things differently, that people thrive in certain situations differently than others. And to be in the environments that you're describing seems very narrow-minded or closed-minded. Seems very just almost I don't want to put words in your mouth, but almost like a do what you're told kind of atmosphere, or just don't deviate from the path kind of thing. And so that's not leadership, right? And so I love hearing stories. I love sharing stories that do expose and share practical experiences with, hey, here's what it looked like for me to break out of that mold. Here's what it looked like for me. And you mentioned, and one thing I want to get to, you mentioned a season of mentoring. It sounds like you may still do that, but using that experience, not just internalizing it, but also using that as a catalyst to help others and educate others in a productive way, I think is another responsibility that leaders take.
True, and I think in my early days, I started at the bottom, worked my way up, and I had at various times I had various teams of younger trainees underneath me, and when you're young yourself. So I was sort of probably in my early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, sort of that kind of range, even 30s. And you've got these other people that your employees. I don't know, for me, I just automatically, naturally, not only trained them, but mentored them. And I didn't realize I was doing it. And I didn't realize what the impact I was having on them was until, a few decades later, run into them again. And I get this. There was one of the firms I worked for had a reunion thing. So I kind of ran into everybody again, which was kind of cool. And so many of them just came straight to me with, Amanda, thank you so much because of you. You remember you told me X, Y, Z? No, I have no recollection of saying that whatsoever. But I obviously had. It had hit a note with this, each person said something different, but I had made a big impact on them. And I think it was only then that I realized just that I am a leader without really realizing I was one. B, that you do make an impact on the people around you, and everything you say particularly with those that are coming up, the ranks behind you, they're listening and watching for what you do, what you say, how you act, everything. And if they like what they see, they're using that as a role model, whether you realize it or not. And I say, I didn't realize it for a long time, just how much of a role model I was, and it was the guys and the girls that were coming up to me. It was both. But the ones that I'm particularly appreciative, obviously, were the girls, because I knew how hard they potentially were having to deal with as well. But I think when we're younger, we don't realize what that impact is, and it's only a bit later that start to realize, everything I say is potentially going to impact something. This conversation we're having now, someone's going to listen to this and it's going to make a difference to them. And they're going to go, I could do something differently as a result of this, or I don't have to put up with, if we're talking about some of my past, don't have to put up with that either. I could make a change. And sure, there's a lot of bravery and courage in doing some of that. And for me, I don't think I'm anything special. I think that was always one of the things that was funny, is I've always thought that I was, just like everybody else. And that, but then you kind of realize, no, actually, perhaps, I do have a more important role to play in the world, a more important role to play around other people in terms of the impact I can make. And that's something that's kind of come to me more recently. But
thank you for being a part of this journey. Definitely subscribe and check out Be a Catalyst on Instagram and on Twitter. Also, don't forget to check out the YouTube channel, where you'll find videos in addition to the Catalyst podcast recordings that give a little bit more context around my heart for training, my heart for seeing early to middle managers and first-time leaders really thrive and be a catalyst in the organization that they're in the project that they are after, everything that goes along with that. So thank you for being a part of this. Tune in for the next episode, and remember, be you, be confident, be a catalyst.